We talk a lot about how to learn English, but sometimes what really helps is hearing about other people's journeys and true stories, right?
It truly is, Emily. Everyone has their own unique way of learning, their own challenges, and their own breakthroughs. It's so inspiring to hear real-life stories.
And often, when you're feeling a bit stuck, getting inspiration from someone else's experience can make all the difference. You realize you're not alone, and there are many paths to success.
That's exactly it. Seeing how real people manage to improve their English, even when they face difficulties, can give you so much motivation and practical ideas to try. By the way, I'm Liam.
And I'm Emily. This is English in Comfort, the place where you can learn English while you relax, lie down, or even while you sleep. No pressure, no stress, just real English.
Today, we're doing something a little different. We're going to dive into some fascinating real-life stories of how people from different backgrounds manage to significantly improve their English. This is really helpful for your English listening practice.
That's right. We'll share their experiences, the unique methods they used, and the challenges they overcame. Our goal is for you to get inspired, find new motivation, and perhaps discover some new ideas for your own English learning journey.
Whether you're looking for new strategies or just a boost of encouragement, these stories are packed with insights to help you improve your English.
So get comfortable, grab your tea, and let's get started. All right, let's dive into our first inspiring story. This comes from Maria, who shares her journey on Learn English with Maria. Her experience really highlights how passion and immersion can make a huge difference.
We think her story offers some fantastic insights, especially for those of you who might feel a bit shy about speaking or are wondering if travel truly helps.
Exactly. So, Maria began her English journey with a self-study course that she found irresistible. Even though she was quite shy about speaking at first, she bravely started by reading aloud. She also had some valuable help from a private tutor. Her English truly took off when she traveled to England, where she had to use the language every single day by talking to local people. Maria became a really big reader, starting with simpler books and eventually reading thousands of advanced English books. She even studied English literature at university, and later used her skills professionally as a translator and a teacher. For Maria, becoming fluent meant making English a fun and necessary part of her daily life.
Wow, what an inspiring start to our collection of stories. That was Maria's journey, which she shares on her platform, Learn English with Maria, My Journey to English Fluency. If you want to check out her full story later, you can find it there.
Absolutely. And there are already some really valuable takeaways from just the beginning of her story. First, let's talk about how she started by just reading.
Yes, Maria mentioned she was shy about speaking at first, which is something many of our listeners can probably relate to. Instead of forcing herself to speak in front of others right away, she used reading as her starting point.
This is a really important skill for beginners. When you read especially aloud, you're not just practicing your reading comprehension, you're also practicing your pronunciation, the rhythm of English, and getting comfortable hearing your own voice speak the language. It's a safe way to start engaging with spoken English.
And if you can read aloud about topics that genuinely interest you, it's even better. When you read about something you care about, your brain is more engaged. You're not just looking at words. You're connecting with ideas, which helps you remember new vocabulary and sentence structures more easily. It makes the learning feel less like work and more like exploring a topic you love.
Exactly. So find books, articles, or even stories online that you enjoy, and try reading them out loud, even if it's just for a few minutes a day.
And Maria also mentioned that her journey began with a self-study course that she found irresistible. This shows the power of finding a learning resource that genuinely excites you and fits your learning style.
If a course or a method feels fun and interesting to you, you'll naturally want to spend more time with it. This links back to what we discussed in a previous episode about making learning enjoyable and finding your personal learning superpower.
So, starting with reading aloud and finding a self-study method you love were key first steps for Maria.
But then something big happened. Her English truly took off when she traveled to England.
Yes, and this is where the power of immersion really comes into play. When Maria moved to England, she was suddenly surrounded by English every single day. She had to speak every day, from going to the store, taking the bus, asking for directions, or just making new friends.
This kind of constant exposure and necessity is incredibly effective. When you're immersed, you're not just studying English, you're living in English. Your brain is constantly hearing, thinking, and trying to use the language. It pushes you outside your comfort zone, which forces faster improvement.
Now, many of you might be thinking, that sounds amazing, but what if I can't travel or I don't have the means to move to an English-speaking country right now? And that's a very fair question.
Exactly. But as we always say here on English and Comfort, you can turn your home and your personal space into an English-only environment too. You can change your phone settings to English, use apps in English, watch your favorite movies and TV shows in English with subtitles, or even just read books in English.
It might seem difficult at first, and you might think this is too much, but you need to be a little strict with yourself. Think about Maria. When she moved to England, she didn't have a choice. She didn't have a translator or anyone to ask in her native language. She had to use English.
And that kind of gentle push, even when you create it for yourself at home, will lead to amazing improvement. You'll start to see progress because you're consistently using the language in real ways.
What's truly inspirational about Maria's story is her journey from being shy about speaking to not only becoming fluent, but also becoming a teacher and a translator.
Yes, it's really incredible. It reminds us that your starting point doesn't define your potential. You might begin feeling shy, like Maria did, but with dedication and finding methods that work for you, you can achieve amazing things.
Her story is a perfect example that you can be anything you want as long as you don't stop. You just need to start, even if it's slow, like starting with reading aloud. Who knows? Maybe one day, like Maria, you'll be teaching English or using it professionally in ways you never imagined.
This time we're going to hear the story of Halime Y. Her story, shared on the Link Home Study platform, really highlights persistence and balancing all English skills.
Halima Y shared her experience on the LINC Home Study platform. She focused on improving her English by consistently reading interesting ebooks, even when she didn't understand every word at first. She slowly learned to rely less on a dictionary. Listening was also a big part of her routine. She pushed herself to listen to news and phone calls in English, even when it felt boring. Living in an English-speaking country, she had to speak English every day, whether at the supermarket or at her child's school, which helped her overcome shyness. She also made herself practice writing, a skill she initially avoided. Halime's story shows how being persistent and choosing engaging materials for all 4 skills, reading, listening, speaking, and writing, can lead to great progress even when it's tough.
That was Halim's story, which she shared on the LINC Home Study platform. You can find her full English learning journey there if you'd like to read more. So, just like Maria, Halime also focused on reading consistently. She started with interesting ebooks. If you think about it, reading can often feel like the easiest skill to start with because you can control the speed. You can look up words if you need to, and you don't have the pressure of speaking right away.
That's true. It's a comfortable entry point into the language, allowing you to build vocabulary and understand sentence structures at your own pace.
Then she pushed herself with listening. She specifically mentioned listening to news and phone calls in English, even when it felt boring. This is a fantastic point because sometimes real-life listening isn't always exciting, but it's crucial for understanding native speakers.
But this also shows incredible persistence. It's easy to only listen to things we enjoy, but Halim knew she needed to challenge herself with more difficult or less engaging material to truly improve her comprehension in varied situations.
And then, similar to Maria, Halimi had the advantage of living in an English-speaking country, so she had to speak English every day. Whether it was at the supermarket or at her child's school, this everyday use helped her overcome shyness and actively practice her speaking skills.
This continuous real-world practice is invaluable, just like we discussed with Maria. It forces you to use what you've learned and makes the language a natural part of your life.
What's truly amazing about Halime's story is that she also made herself practice writing, a skill she initially avoided. She had incredible dedication to developing all 4 English skills: reading, listening, speaking, and writing.
It's so inspiring because many learners tend to focus on just 1 or 2 skills. But Halime really pushed herself in every area. She truly proved that it is possible to improve all aspects of your English, even the ones you find difficult.
There's something else Halimi mentioned that is really interesting and incredibly crucial when you're learning English. She slowly learned to rely less on a dictionary.
Ah, yes, this is a big one. Many learners feel like they must look up every single word they don't know. But really, constantly relying on a dictionary can actually slow you down when learning English.
Exactly. When you always translate every word, your brain isn't really learning to think in English. It's constantly going back and forth between your native language and English. This slows down your comprehension and your ability to respond naturally.
So, if you're also using translation apps for every unknown word, start by slowly relying on them less too. Try to guess the meaning from the other words in the sentence or the overall context first. You can always check later. Slowly, you'll be able to take them away definitely.
This takes practice, but it trains your brain to make connections directly in English, which is a big step towards fluency.
Looking at Halime's whole journey, it's truly inspirational. She shows us that real progress comes from a combination of strategies and a strong mindset.
She managed to overcome shyness by putting herself in situations where she had to speak English every day, whether it was at the supermarket or her child's school. That kind of brave, consistent effort is what builds confidence.
And she kept pushing herself even when it was hard. Think about her listening to news and phone calls in English, even when it felt boring. That takes real dedication. But she did it, and it clearly helped her understanding of real-life English.
Her story is a shining example of how you can improve all 4 of your English skills, reading, listening, speaking, and writing, by being persistent and disciplined. She didn't just pick her favorite skill, she worked on everything.
Halim's journey reminds us that improvement might not always be exciting, but with consistent effort, even in the boring parts, and by being strategic about things like dictionary use, you can achieve remarkable results.
She's a fantastic example of what's possible with determination. All right, for our final inspiring story for today, we're going to hear from someone quite famous in the language learning world. This is Luca Lampariello.
Yes, Luca is known as a polyglot. And if you don't know, a polyglot means someone who can speak, read, and write in many different languages. So he definitely knows a thing or two about learning English.
Luca Lampariello explains on his website, lucalampariello.com, that he learned English by practicing every single day, even if it was just for 30 minutes. He believes in what he calls the law of language accumulation, that small efforts really add up. From the very beginning, Luca focused on correct pronunciation by reading aloud and practicing on his own. He also believes in learning all 4 skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking, together, not separately. He watched movies with subtitles and kept a detailed logbook of his progress. Luca emphasizes moving from just studying English to actively using it, and he found that making friends with native English speakers helped him a lot. That was Luca Lampariello. My story of learning English, 7 unforgettable lessons. His methods are definitely worth looking at.
Absolutely. The very first thing he mentioned is something we always insist on here at English in Comfort. Practicing every single day, even if it's just for 30 minutes.
He calls it the law of language accumulation, which is a fancy way of saying exactly what we've been telling you. Consistency over intensity.
It's so true. Practicing just 30 minutes every day is so much more effective than studying for, say, 5 hours every Saturday, and then not touching English for the rest of the week. Like Lucas said, small efforts really add up. Your brain remembers things better with regular, shorter exposure.
And notice how he also started with reading aloud from the very beginning, focusing on correct pronunciation. This really emphasizes our earlier point that reading is a great starting point for many learners. It's often a really fun and interesting way to begin without the pressure of a real conversation.
Reading aloud helps you connect the written word to the spoken sound, which is vital for both understanding and speaking. It's a foundational skill for building confidence. That's why everyone starts with it.
But then Luca also emphasized something crucial. Moving from just studying English to actively using it.
This is so important. It's the difference between knowing facts about English and being able to actually do things with English. You can study grammar rules all day, but if you don't try to use them in a sentence, they won't become natural.
Using English actively is truly the most effective way to learn. This means trying to speak, trying to write, listening purposefully, and not just consuming information. It's about making the language a tool for communication, not just a subject in a book.
Luca's point about active use connects directly to why people who learn faster make English a part of their daily lives, even if it's just practicing describing their day to themselves.
Another really powerful idea he shares is about learning all 4 skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking, together, not separately.
This is a fantastic point. Many learners try to master one skill before moving to the next, but Luca shows that they are all connected. When you learn them together, they actually help each other grow.
He used the example of watching movies with subtitles. Think about it. When you do this, you're listening to the English dialogue, and at the same time, you're reading the English subtitles. You're combining 2 skills at once.
And to make it even more fun and powerful, you can pause and repeat what the characters say. This is great speaking practice because you're imitating natural pronunciation and rhythm. And if you learn a new word or phrase, you can write it down in your notebook.
So just by watching a movie, you can practice listening, reading, speaking by repeating, and writing by taking notes. It's a very efficient way to learn, hitting all 4 skills at the same time.
And finally, Luca also found that making friends with native English speakers helped him